Hello, everyone. This is Jimmy Coltis back again with another logic video. Today we're going to be talking about variable-controlled menus and submenus, and I will explain the process behind it. For the purposes of this video, I have stamped out a small sculpture set to stamp shape, mirror mode, and I use grid snap. It's not really super important to have this piece of material, I just think it makes a nice mount in case I have to move things around. It's invisible and non-collidable, and I've put a little microchip on it called menu. I've also stamped out another microchip which I call controls. Inside here I have a controller sensor set to wireless or remote controllable. I also have another microchip called output. Inside here I have several wireless transmitters, these little things here, which you can find in gadgets and then go to sensors and input. And for each of these, they represent a specific input from the controller sensor. This one is up on the D-pad. All you gotta do is relabel it. And if you wanted to relabel it using words, that's also possible. I used icons. If you go to the Dreams Me website and look up icons, you'll find out how to make these. We have X and circle, and if you open up the controller sensor with L1 and square, you can see where all these outputs are and where their wires lead. I also have a little controller delay on a timeline set to play once, 200% playback speed. And on here I have an action recorder set to keyframe mode, and it has a single frame recorded. That frame is to turn off the output microchip, preventing us from making too many outputs in rapid succession. There's a tiny little space, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a tiny space at the beginning of the timeline which will allow us to make the input as soon as we press X. Time for the game to process the output before shutting off the microchip. Next, I have a variable which is going to govern all of our menus. It's a little bit easier than using a selector, although we will still employ selectors later, but I'll talk about that in time. This variable is not set to persist in Dreams, since it would actually be ideal for it to be non-persistent. And the variable, of course, is labeled menu. Minimum value, 0. Maximum possible value, 1000, although I don't know if you'd need that many. But basically, this process is going to use mathematics to control menus. And the first thing you're going to want is a calculator from Logic and Processing. This calculator is going to be set to equal, and the target value, operand 2, is going to be set to 0. Meaning that when this variable is at 0, the active menu will be menu 1, which is inside this microchip. I've connected the power, or the result, of our calculator to the menu microchip. And now we'll get started on how exactly the menu system works, you know, the nuts and bolts of it. First, we have this microchip, which basically acts as a receiver for the signals coming from our wireless controller sensor or remote control sensor. We have up and down on the D-pad. I connected up to the arrow that moves to previous, so that when you press up, it'll go up on the menu, and when you press down, it'll move to the next output, which would be down. Crossing the wires is a little bit confusing, but that is generally the best way to do it. And I have a selector here connected to 2 microchips. Inside these microchips is another wireless receiver, X in this case. And the output, or signal from the transmitter, is hooked up to this node, which is then connected to this variable modifier, which is set to set. The operation value is 1.0, and the variable name that it targets is, of course, menu. Oh, one other thing I'd like to talk about real quick. For these particular buttons that I've hooked up to these wireless transmitters, notice that I did not connect them to connect the wire, that is, to the power button. Instead, I connected it to the signal to receiver output, or input, I should say. And that's actually what you want. You do not want it connected to the power, otherwise this is not going to work the way it's supposed to, so just keep that in mind. Now I also have a keyframe which is currently active. You may have noticed it. And if it's not active, if you record it, all you gotta do is just open up the menu with L1 and square, and then press X here to turn it on. But I've got these 2 text displayers in this microchip called HUD. First menu is Stuff, second menu is Options. And if we go here to the border properties, I've turned the opacity down to 0. I've also made the border width large so that it will be very visible. And it's going to be our indicator for which menu is selected. All this keyframe does is when this microchip is active, it turns on the border opacity to 100%. When it's not active, the border opacity will be 0%. Anyway, I'm going to talk about, though, how you set the variable values and how we're going to govern our various submenus, which you may have noticed down here below. First of all, we were talking about this wireless receiver connected to the variable modifier earlier. You'll notice that the value is 1, and this is very important. Once the value on our variable is 1, it will trigger this calculator set to equal 1. So once this value matches that value, the output will be positive and turn on this submenu, which is pretty similar to our base menu. There are a few different modifications. I'm not going to be going deeper into more menus, so these variables are not really necessary. I just left them in. But there is one new piece of logic, which is a microchip called return. Inside it, we have a wireless receiver set to detect circle, of course. And it is connected to a variable modifier set to 0. So it will reset our variable and put us back to the menu if we press circle. Menu 1, that is. It'll set us back to the beginning. And if you wanted to go back to any submenu, just remember the value that triggered it. For instance, if we went into a submenu within this menu, the value we would want to go back to when we press circle would actually be 1. Otherwise, you just go all the way back to the base menu, which is feasible, but a bit jarring, so keep that in mind. Usually they want you to go back, one menu at a time when you're selecting and deselecting. And for our second submenu, I've set the value to 10. You could really make it any value you wanted from 1 to 1000. Whatever you can remember in your head is valuable. And as you can see, for our second menu, when we press X, we'll be setting the value to 10. As long as the calculators are properly organized, you could have multiple menus, perhaps hundreds of them. I actually do have a piece of logic currently available to the public which does implement this system and does have multiple menus. I believe it was for my my lore database for my Godzilla game. Basically uses this system. And it's a lot easier to program, I think, than other menus I've made in the past. So I think that's one of the advantages of the variable system. But let's go ahead and test it out. Menu 1, we have stuff, and we have options. Up and down on the D-pad switches between the two options. If we click on stuff, we'll go into this submenu that contains two menus called Blum and Gourd. They don't currently go anywhere, but they're just for show. If you go back with circle, you'll be set to menu number 1. Then you can access options, which has trade and gavel within it. And that's how you make submenus and variable controlled menus. I hope you find this helpful for whatever kind of game you might be making. I think it's very useful in cleaning up logic and making things a bit more streamlined, especially if you don't like seeing all those wires everywhere. Having the wireless receivers makes it a little bit easier on the eyes. Thanks for watching. Hopefully this was an insightful video or otherwise enjoyable. If it was, then go ahead and subscribe if you can, and hit the bell to keep up with our videos. Also, subscribed or not, give a like. If you have any questions or statements, leave a comment. We try to answer all comments. If you like what we do here and want to help out, consider becoming a channel member. Alternatively, you can check out the link in the description to support us through Patreon. Until next time, take it easy. That's all for now.